Let's talk about prescriptions.
Prescriptions are how-tos. They are hacks and they are techniques and methods, various methodologies to get somewhere. When you talk about something from the standpoint of a mechanical behavior, turning on a computer, riding a bicycle, prescriptions are useful. The problem is that whenever you venture into the realm of art in any form, be it in business or sports or even in the setting of finding peace in your life or freedom or arriving at enlightenment or all of these so-called spiritual pursuits, those things cannot be prescriptionized. If you attempt to prescriptionize them, what happens is the prescription becomes the new God. You begin to try to live up to the prescription. In the beginning, you had a place to go. I want to go to X. Then you introduce an intermediary, the prescription. This is how you get to X. Then what will happen is that your mind will begin to focus upon the intermediary, and it will enter into a deal, which it never signed up for. That deal is that for the rest of your life, you will attempt to satisfy the intermediary. In all domains, you have many people who do great things. The Buddha attained enlightenment. You have Michael Jordan and Tiger Woods doing amazing things in golf, and Elon Musk and various individuals who do great things in business, and even yourself. If you take what those people did and you write a book and said that these people did X, if you follow that, you will not become them. You will not.
I've found business biographies to be useless for building a great business. They're good for inspiration. I can read Steve Jobs' bio and be inspired, but I can't be Steve Jobs. And if I want to be amazing at something, then I have to find my own way there. For mechanical things, how-tos work. But when you're trying to operate at the top of a field, or when you're trying to do something creative, how-tos don't work beyond the most extreme basics. When you're first starting something, it is actually a mechanical endeavor. You're just figuring out how to drive a car. But when you're trying to figure out how to race it around a track faster than anyone else, then all coaches and techniques and prescriptions have to fall by the wayside, and you are at the edge of the art.
That's correct. Now, the problem is conditioning. When there's only been one loudspeaker in a person's ear for his entire life, then that is his norm, and that is the only language that he knows. That paradigm of how to is so embedded inside the culture. It is so deeply embedded inside the cortex of the human brain that the idea of omitting it or the idea of even challenging its existence is completely off the wall. It is so otherworldly and antithetical that it takes years to even get to the point where the idea of prescriptions being a impediment to whatever that you seek begins to dawn.
People consider you to be a spiritual guy on Twitter. And in my understanding, you're not like that at all. Spirituality is a pointless word. It's about utility. Is something useful? Does it get you where you want to go? You're always talking about extreme performance. And that's why your brand is Siddha Performance. It's seeking performance, essentially, and seeking the truth that gets you to the highest performance in all things, whether it's business or sports or peace of mind. This drive towards utility, reality, truth, performance, they somehow wander into spirituality. People interpret them in spiritual ways, but it feels like spirituality is so cluttered with nonsense that it gets lost. Your model makes sense if one realizes that it's designed to go after extreme performance. If you want to be the best in the world at anything, you cannot follow prescription. If you want to be okay at it, then sure, you can follow prescription. If you want to learn how to lose a pound a month and get in decent shape, then you can follow a calorie counting worksheet. But if you want to be a shredded bodybuilder or an Olympic athlete, you're not going to get there through how-tos. You're going to have to create and forge your own path that is unique to you. Would that be a good way of putting it?
Well, what I will add to that is that one does not have to want to become the greatest in the world. If you look at the lives of human beings, there is intense struggle. The guy who works 3 jobs doesn't want to work 3 jobs. He may not want to become Tiger Woods, but he wants to be beyond being forced to work 3 jobs. What keeps him working 3 jobs is prescriptions. The futility of prescriptions does not just harm one who wants to become world class, it gravely harms the one who simply doesn't want to struggle.
The way I think about it in the business world is that hard work has very little to do with effectiveness. The grocery store owner or the person working at a restaurant might work 60, 80 hours a week, and that might be all Elon Musk is working. But Elon's making a lot more money because of his specific knowledge that cannot be taught, but can be learned on the job if you have a strong enough desire. Because Elon is doing the right things, he is far more effective in earning power. And the right things, at least in business, can't be taught because it's a moving target. You can only give very vague principles that inspire people to head in the right direction, but I can't teach you how to make money or trade the stock market. It's like when people ask you for stock tips. No one who's any good at stock trading gives actionable investment advice in a public forum because all the details are too hard to convey. I can always tell people who ask for stock tips, they're not really serious about investing. People who ask for book recommendations aren't really serious about reading. People who ask, what business should I build, aren't really serious about entrepreneurship. People who say, what career path should I take, they're not really serious about their career. When someone's asking for a how-to in anything, they aren't actually that serious about it. If they were truly serious about it, they would figure it out. But then that leaves the paradoxical question, well, how do I figure it out?
Take the person who, quote, made it and became world class in whatever he did. If he went back and retraced his steps and did everything again the same way, but this time he did it by mimicking himself, he would fail. Even he wouldn't be able to do it. What has to be understood is that where greatness comes from, it's a very murky affair. It is nonlinear. It is unpredictable. Perhaps nature and the universe set it up this way, that you have to jump in. And once you jump in the soup and you're being bombarded through all sides and you live in confusion and you have no idea which way is up, if the obsession is there, then what happens is through some messy process, you find a way. You see light at the end of the tunnel. You forge a path through the jungle. That was not done according to a how. You were flailing the entire time. So there was no how to flail. When you come out through the tunnel and someone asks you how you did it, you have no idea. The thing that's almost laughable is when you ask a great athlete, can you show me how you did that? They won't come on and say, I have no idea. They will provide you with some semblance of an answer, which is a non-answer. And then what they will do is, because there's a gun pointed to their head and their back's against a wall, they will create the highlights. When the human being who watches that follows the highlights, he misses. And the reason that he misses is because it's all the small things.
I can't watch Roger Federer play tennis and swing the racket the same way, nor will any description from him on how to swing the racket get me to swing it the right way. Then we go to intellectual efforts. We start asking Warren Buffett why he invests in a company, and there he can try and create a mental construct as to how he thinks and how he invests in the company. But there are just as many details to Warren Buffett's activities when he decides what to invest in and how he lives his life and how he thinks as there are to Roger Federer's body running around a tennis court hitting a ball. The details are not transmissible. They're not copyable. You can be inspired to try it yourself, but without that sincerity, that obsession, you won't get there.
Not only are the details not transmissible, the details are not even knowable.
So Warren and Roger don't even know it themselves.
Absolutely not. No great artist knows. The things that you do greatest are the things that you know not how you do them.
I would argue that you're not even there when you do them. You're not consciously thinking about it. I find that when I'm speaking, I do best when I'm not thinking about what I'm going to say, and I don't even hear what I'm going to say until it comes out of my mouth.
There's this idea in Jungian psychology called the circumambulation. And Jung had this idea that you had a potential future self, which would be in potential everything that you could be. And that it manifests itself moment to moment in your present life by making you interested in things. And the things that you're interested in are the things that would guide you along the path that would lead you to maximal development. Now, it sounds like a metaphysical idea or a mystical idea even, but it's not. It's not. It's a really profoundly biological idea. The idea is something like, well, You're set up so that you're automatically interested in those things that would fully expand you as a well-adapted creature. Well, like, there's nothing radical about that idea. What else could possibly be the case? Unless there's something fundamentally flawed about you, that is what the situation would be. It's kind of interesting to think about how that would be manifest moment to moment, but the idea is something like, well, your interest is captured by those things that lead you down the path of development. Well, that better be the case. Okay, so that's fine. And so there's some utility in pursuing those things that you're interested in. That's the call to adventure, let's say. So, and the call to adventure takes you all sorts of places. Now, the problem with the call to adventure is, like, what the hell do you know? You might be interested in things that are kind of warped and bent. And often it's the case that when new parts of people manifest themselves and grip their interests, say, they do it very badly and shoddily. And so you stumble around like an idiot when you try to do something new. That's why the fool is the precursor to the savior from the symbolic perspectives, because you have to be a fool before you can be a master. And if you're not willing to be a fool, then you can't be a master. So you're gonna, it's an error-ridden process. And that's also laid out in the Old Testament stories, because the first thing that happens to all these patriarchal figures when God kicks them out of their father's house when they're like 84 is that they run into all sorts of trouble, and some of it's social and some of it's natural and some of it's a consequence of their own moral inadequacy. So they're fools. But the thing that's so interesting is that despite the fact that they're fools, they're still supposed to go on the adventure, and that they're capable of learning enough as a consequence of moving forward on the adventure so that they straighten themselves out across time. And so it's something like this. So this circumambulation that Jung talked about was this continual, we'll return to this continual circling in some sense of who you could be. You might notice, for example, that there are themes in your life. You know, when you go back across your experiences, you see you kind of have your typical experience that sort of repeats itself. And there might be variation on it, like a musical theme, but it's like you're circling yourself and getting closer to yourself as you move across time. That's the circumambulation. Now, you remember that for a sec, because we'll go back to it. Okay, so imagine that something glimmers before you. It's an interest that's dawning, and you decide, well, first of all, you're paralyzed. You think, well, how do I know if I should pursue that? It's probably a stupid idea. And the proper response to that is, you're right, it probably is a stupid idea, because almost all ideas are stupid. And so the probability that as you move forward on your adventure that you're going to get it right the first time is zero. It's just not going to happen. And so then you might think, well, maybe I'll just wait around until I get the right idea, and which people do, right? So they're like 40-year-old, 13-year-olds, which is not a good idea. And so they wait around until it's waiting for Godot, until they finally got it right. But the problem is you're too stupid to know when you've got it right. So waiting around isn't going to help, because even if the perfect opportunity manifested itself to you in your incomplete form, the probability that you would recognize it as the perfect opportunity is zero. You might even think it's the worst possible idea that you've ever heard of anywhere. Highly likely. Highly likely. So you have, there's, Nietzsche called that a will to stupidity, which I really liked. So, because he thought of stupidity as being, you know, it's you have to take it into account fundamentally and work with it. And so you can take these tentative steps on your pathway to destiny, and you can assume that you're going to do it badly. And that's really useful, because you don't have to beat yourself up. It's pretty easy to do it badly. But the thing is, it's way better to do it badly than not to do it at all. And that's the continual message that echoes through these historical stories in Genesis. It's like, these are flawed people. They should have got the hell out of their house way before they did. And they go out and they stumble around in tyranny and famine and self-betrayal and violence. But it's a hell of a lot better than just rotting away at home. And that's great. So that's good. And so why is that? Well, okay, so you start your path and you think that you're heading, you know, towards your star. And so you go in that direction. And then, because you're here, the world looks a particular way, but then when you move here, the world looks different, and you're different as a consequence of having made that voyage. And so what that means is that now that thing that glimmers in front of you is going to have shifted its location, because you weren't very good at specifying it to begin with, and now that you're a little sharper and more focused than you were, it's going to reveal itself with more accuracy to you. And so then you have to take a, it's almost like a 180-degree reversal. But it isn't, because, you've gone this far, and that's a long ways to get that far. But that's a lot farther than you would be if you just stayed where you were, waiting. And so it doesn't matter that you overshoot continually. Because as you overshoot, even if you don't learn what you should have done, you're going to continually learn what you shouldn't keep doing. And if you learn enough about what you shouldn't keep doing, then that's tantamount at some point to learning at the same time what you should be doing. So it's okay. So it's like this. Now, what's cool about it, though, I think, is that as you progress, the degree of overshooting starts to decline, right? And that we know that there's nothing hypothetical about that. As you learn a new skill, like even to play a song on the piano, for example, you overshoot madly. You're making all sorts of mistakes to begin with, and then the mistakes, they disappear.